For me, the Ferrari 812 Superfast, even as early as the leaked data mining list, where of course we first saw this was due for inclusion, presumably in GT7, well now of course it is here, but it was a car which I was never hugely anticipating or particularly hyping up, even though many people in the community seem to really be looking forward to it. It kind of just seemed like it would offer a lot of what the F12 already can, and in some ways that is quite literally so. Even the weight, for example, is exactly the same as that car. The horsepower, although higher, isn't crazy high in comparison to an F12, 788 horses, 1525 kilos, and yet you have a high point level to begin with, which means that for its level you can't necessarily do as much to it. Let's say you wanted to keep it under 700 points, for example, and even that aside, the price is higher as well, so it has to justify that. Is it a vehicle which feels like a good addition to Ferrari? And of course, when it comes to these reviews, what can it do when you build it up as well? Well, to talk about the second part first, the tuning and upgrade side of things is a mixed bag, I would say. You can definitely drop the weight quite a bit. In terms of horsepower, of course, is very powerful, but again, not a huge difference compared to the F12, still no way near the most powerful of supercars in the game, so it's never going to be like an absolute demon in a straight line in the way that some cars just naturally are to begin with, like a Chiron, for example, but at the same time, it doesn't really offer anything else to make up for that. The cornering is good, it's sharp, it's aggressive, it's kind of smooth and forgiving at the same time, so in standard form, I would say it's a pretty nice car to work with, but it doesn't feel like it's anything remarkable. It's not low enough on the point scale to be a real weapon, an unexpected pick, which if you think about it, something like a 612 Scaglietti or a 550 or a 575, if those were brought back, those could be actually quite useful by today's standards, much in the same way as the C5 Corvette, because it has less power by today's standards, but also lower weight, a lower point level, and presumably a lower price in the case of some cars. Well, all of those are pretty nice advantages to have. In the case of this one, to me at least, it just feels too close to the F12 to really justify being in the game. A whole lot of effort would have presumably gone into mapping out the car, and yet for all of that you've got essentially two very similar vehicles occupying a very similar amount of space in the realm of Gran Turismo, whereas if you compare that, for example, to maybe the aforementioned GTs like a 612 or a 575, I think many fans would be really happy to see those. They're kind of less expected. But then if you go to newer times, you could add an FF or a GT4 or whatever else, and that would be at least as unexpected, but also crucially offer something different. In the case of those cars, all-wheel drive, for example, which would be a huge difference in the world of Ferrari. Such as it is, this car is not bad in any particular way, it's just not quite remarkable in any way either. And in terms of any caution or advice I would give, this is very much so in standard form and in built form a vehicle wherein you really do need to pay attention to the flashing brake indicator, because as soon as that comes on, you need to pay attention and start braking. It's a very good car in terms of brakes if you keep it within those parameters, but if you overshoot that braking line even by like half a second or a second, you will feel the difference. With some cars you can kind of get away with braking a bit too late and sort of save it. With this car, really not so much. I think part of the reason why is because it's so quick. It definitely lives up to its name in terms of sheer acceleration, at least if you're comparing a standard supercar to a standard supercar, but once you start getting into the world of tuning and upgrades, it doesn't quite feel like it has the edge anymore. In terms of replicas and, racing side of stuff, competizione kind of stuff, sure, go for it if you want to, I guess. It's cool enough for replicas, but it's just the kind of car where I don't feel was quite what many players were assuming it would be, and I definitely get a similar vibe in that sense to the C8 Corvette. With something like an Evo 9 or a Lexus LFA, I understand why people want it back, or an RS6 or a BMW M5. You already know what you're getting if you play the older games, and they are icons for a reason. They're proven cars with a number of advantages in their specific fields. Other cars, like the C8 or this, well, you could tell it was coming from players who have never played Forza, because you've already got those cars in Forza, and they like the car in real life, and they're kind of imagining what they imagine the car to be like in real life as translating into the game, and it just doesn't work that way. So yes, in real life you'd have a whole lot of fun driving a 812 or a Corvette C8, but then when you actually get it in the game and think, oh, okay, it's not bad, but it's not this earth-shattering, world-changing thing that I was expecting it to be. Whereas with an LFA, or if let's say for example the Carrera GT were an update car instead of a day one vehicle, imagine how happy players would be. If that alternate history was the case, I think many players would have probably loved how that car feels, even as challenging and as long in the tooth, you could say, by today's standards those older 2000s supercars feel. There's just a certain charm and a fandom that's just with them. The LP640, the Vanquish even, even cars which weren't necessarily quite as good in their time. Imagine if a Maserati MC12, for example, were to be brought back. How many of us, myself included certainly, would be so happy with that? And yet on paper, and even in a straight line, it doesn't really live up to many of today's supercars, and yet it has that wow factor. It feels different, it feels special, and it actually does deliver on the track. This Ferrari is not bad in any particular way, but I don't find it to be remarkable in any way either. The Corvette, as I said yesterday, is definitely a more significant vehicle, and for the most part I would argue a more useful one as well. That's it for my thoughts though on the 812 Superfast. Not a bad car by any stretch, just not quite the game-changing experience which some players might have been expecting it to be, I guess. So of course I'll see you tomorrow with the Suzuki Carry, which is definitely my favourite out of this update, so kind of a spoiler there, and of course stick around for that. But for now, thanks for watching.